So, to say the least, Chelsea have been struggling this year. It all started back in March 2022 when the owner at the time, Roman Abramovich, announced he would be selling Chelsea FC due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Later in that same month, Chelsea were then met with a bid from a consortium led by Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital to buy the club. The bid was approved by all required parties by the beginning of May, and about 3 weeks later, Todd Boehly's takeover was officially completed. The takeover was valued at over 4 billion euros. By far the most expensive takeover by 500%. But there was quite a lot of skepticism. For one, Todd Boehly is American. Boom, stigma. And if it's anything the footballing world hates more, it's clueless and or neglecting American owners.
You f***ing American, get the f*** out my club!
But it's not exactly all blind rage either. The Glazers have been using Manchester United as a credit card, and whether United fans want to hear it or not, Erik ten Hag is still a mere bandage to a larger problem at hand. There's also Stan Kroenke, my favorite guy. For the longest time, Stan was flat out ignoring the concerns of Arsenal's aspirations and goals. Because of him, you kept seeing the club slowly decline to a point where Champions League football was no longer a simple guarantee. Also, another good time to once again mention that Stan Kroenke is a garbage human being. And while it's not the Premier League, we could also use Bordeaux as an example. However, Todd Boehly did seem different. In 2021, he told Yahoo Finance about a mantra he stuck by. If he was going to do it, he'd get it done. And he was not lying, because once the summer window arrived, copious amounts of money were spent left and right. Just 13 days into the window, winger Raheem Sterling is brought in from Man City for 56.2 million. After seeing 2 defenders in Andreas Christensen and Antonio Rudiger leave for free, Chelsea needed to quickly bolster up their backline. So 72 hours after the first major signing, one of Serie A's best defenders, Kalidou Koulibaly, signed for 38 million. The same day saw Boehly already playing mind games with his rivals by acquiring young talent Omari Hutchinson from Arsenal. And into the first 5 days of August, even more players arrived. American keeper Gabriel Slonina for 9.09 million, midfielder Carney Chukwuemeka from Aston Villa for 18 million, and Brighton's player of the year, left-back Marc Cucurella, for a whopping 65 million. His signature landing on Chelsea papers was especially significant because Man City really wanted him as well. Chelsea then made 2 more signings in the last week of August. Another defender and a premium one in Wesley Fofana for almost 80 million. And finally on deadline day arrived Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for 12 million. In total, Chelsea spent 282 million, the most of any club in the summer window. And with all these premium players that have come in, Chelsea would immediately find success. Not exactly. After 6 league games, Chelsea acquired only 10 points and had just lost 1-0 to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. An even more alarming figure was the fact that the Blues had conceded more than they scored in the league. But it is early into the season, and these players will need some time to adapt. Now, why the f would you do that? Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea saw very early success and a gradual decline as time went by, which is very resemblant of his time at PSG. But even then, when you bring a shopping cart of new players, you have to give the manager just as much time to adapt as the players. And Tuchel got a solid 8 days. As a result of this sacking though, Chelsea would pay even more money, 21.5 million to be exact, to Brighton to appoint Graham Potter as their new manager. Potter at Brighton was considered one of the most flexible tacticians in the league. His CV showed he was an up-and-coming coach, but this would be his biggest job to date. Potter would have more players to work with, more egos, and the expectations were now sky high, especially with how Chelsea had spent in the summer. Potter started Chelsea was average. They were doing well and not conceding goals because Potter is really good structurally, but their attack was extremely underwhelming. Between the time he was hired and the World Cup break, Potter's Chelsea earned the 11th most points in the league. However, on one positive, he did well to lead Chelsea to the top of their Champions League group. Now, going into the January window after the World Cup, Chelsea were absolutely merciless. Defender Benoit Badiashile was the first signing, coming in at 38 million. On the 7th day of January arrived young prospects in 20-year-old David Datro Fofana and 18-year-old Andre Santos for a total of 24 million. A few days after, striker Joao Felix is brought in on loan for almost 10 million. This was after Arsenal were initially linked with the Portuguese player. Todd was not done unleashing the silly, however. After numerous failed bids from Arsenal, the big bully on January 15th whipped out 100 million to steal 22-year-old winger Mykhailo Mudryk from the Gunners. The exciting talent was extremely promising, but still very raw. Chelsea then added yet another winger in 20-year-old Noni Madueke for 35 million just 5 days later. 19-year-old defender Malo Gusto then came in later on in the month. Finally, Finally, on deadline day, after selling Jorginho to Arsenal, Chelsea spent 121 million to bring in midfielder Enzo Fernandez. The 22-year-old starred in World Cup 2022 and also won Best Young Player. Chelsea needed someone who could be an innovator from deep, someone who could break down defenses with fantastic vision, and Enzo was exactly the player for that job. In total for this window, Chelsea spent 329.5 million, meaning they have spent over 611 million in just a single season.
The only thing better than money is more money. The only thing better than money is more money. The only thing better than money is.
And you might be asking yourself, how is Chelsea spending such ungodly amounts of money without violating a single rule in FFP? To put it simply, Todd Boehly has found a loophole that many owners have used in the past and has absolutely abused it. For example, look at Mykhailo Mudrik's contract. It's 8 years long, meaning Chelsea can actually minimize how much of the transfer fee they pay each season, because no club actually just flat out pays the entire fee right then and there. But Chelsea have done this with pretty much every contract since the summer, which actually prompted UEFA to finally take action and close the loophole for future transfer windows. Nonetheless, how has Graham Potter fared with an even larger wave of new players? Worse, actually. In 12 games, Chelsea has earned just 17 points with 4 wins, 5 draws, and 5 losses. These points aren't being dropped against elite competition either. It's against the likes of Forest, Everton, and even last place Southampton at home. And after a recent loss to Aston Villa at home, Potter has now been sacked after just 31 games, having won just 12. But going back to that figure of just 4 league wins, Chelsea have literally signed more players in 1 month than earned victories in the last 3. Over 600 million spent just to not even be in the upper half of the table. I don't even think Arsenal in 2019 were this bad. But that more than 600 million figure is just including players that have been bought, because Chelsea had to pay Tuchel 14 million in compensation, and then after spending 21 million to bring in Potter, they now have to pay him 14 million in compensation as well. This club is currently the English PSG, and in some regards, they might actually be worse. And you might say, but oh Maxwell, at least they're still in the Champions League. They beat Dortmund. Dortmund collapse every single time there's a little bit of pressure put upon them. But what exactly went wrong here? Why is Chelsea so bad this year? There's a saying, too much of a good thing can become a bad thing. And this is very much the case with Chelsea this season. The club in the last 2 windows has brought in 24 new players. And while other clubs have done the exact same thing, you know, just like Nottingham Forest, who have brought in the population of India, there doesn't seem to be a vision or a direction for these players coming in. It really just seems like Todd Boehly and Chelsea are just playing career mode. Just buy the promising player with sparkling potential and immediately you'll find success. Unfortunately, that's not how football works. But Todd got things even more wrong bringing in someone like Graham Potter. Potter's a good manager, but very inexperienced, especially at the elite level. Not to mention, even during his time at Brighton, there was always a struggle to score goals. I honestly think Todd Boehly may have actually fallen for the English media here, because I think Potter was rated a lot higher than he should have been. The immediate moment Brighton appointed De Zerbi as the new manager, he practically eclipsed Potter's performances. Again, Potter is a great tactician. He has a fantastic CV. He brought Brighton to heights never seen before. But in no way was he ready yet for a job like Chelsea in the current crisis that they're in. But that being said, you can't excuse how Potter has actually been doing at Chelsea. Going back to the problem about scoring goals, Chelsea under Potter have averaged the 4th most possession in the league. However, they had the 14th worst attack and one of the slowest in the league. I've watched Chelsea once this season, and it was against Fulham this year. And I shit you not, the most exciting part of that entire match was when I made a ham sandwich at halftime. Their attack is that bad. There's no inspiration. It's just passing around the box hoping for something to happen. There's no creativity, chemistry, anything. Chelsea fans on Twitter are literally having the Arsenal syndrome of seeing 1-2s in the box and being absolutely mesmerized because they haven't seen it in 18 years. But having that underwhelming of an attack, considering the attacking ability Graham Potter had at his disposal, is a huge problem. And another problem is that Potter had failed to stick with one formation and made several changes to the starting 11 every match. When you lack that much stability, you're not going to be able to create any kind of consistent results. So with Potter out of the way, Tuchel out of the way, window until summer, where do Chelsea go from here? I mean, firstly, they're still in the Champions League, so they have to find a new coach, and they have an interim right now. Who do they call upon? Well, I think probably the biggest candidate has to be Julian Nagelsmann, who got sacked from Bayern after being top of the league table and unbeaten in the Champions League. And he's definitely someone who has a lot more experience in the elite level than Graham Potter.
Yeah, so quick update. They went with Frank Lampard. I don't know why they did that.
But if we're being honest, can this season really be fixed? If your owner is going to constantly buy up the whole market every window, no manager is going to succeed in that climate. And supposedly with a new owner in Todd Boehly, there was supposedly this idea of having stability. Because something that doesn't get talked about much just because of Chelsea's volatile performances, whether high or low, is there hasn't been any stability in management for almost a decade. And maybe also the players who have been around for more than a season are starting to feel that mental fatigue. They have to keep learning new instructions, new play styles, and it can confuse a lot and displace others. I mean, just look at how Mason Mount has been doing lately. So honestly, it'll be very interesting to see how Chelsea fare in the next couple years, especially if this is what keeps up. But I'd love to hear what you guys think, and also just a quick update on the Belgium video essay that should be out next week. Should be. But I promise you, it's very close to being done. But of course, a massive shout out to all our patrons, including Janos Balas, Chris Damasceno, Emilio 009, Aldipu, Alex Rod, Amin Suomez, Aresan, Carlos Anaya, Daniel Ortiz, Francisco Hernandez, Guy, Jonah, Miguel Munoz, Return Fire, Rory Byrne, The Motor Drive, Tomicus, Vanilla Mexican 17, Victor, Dominic Griffin, Emmett Shea, Lewis, Joe Aparicio, MX Weeb, Patrick Barley, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to join the Patreon, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my TikTok, trying to get to 20,000 there, and of course you can follow my semi-active Twitch. But until then, I'll see you guys.